Collective for this Tuesday, June 8th. We're excited to have everybody with us. As we like to do when we start the boot camps, first, I'm Robert Theobald, Small Business Ombudsman and Vice President of Small Business Services at the Arizona Commerce Authority, and I'm glad to be here with you today. So we'd like to start by first thanking our community partners. We could not do these boot camp sessions without all our community partners. They are fundamental to our boot camp success. They provide their expertise, their time, and their effort, and we couldn't do these sessions without them. So the Small Business Bootcamp and Resource Collective is designed to help small businesses return from the COVID crisis stronger than ever. It is a statewide initiative supported by all of our community partners, and it is a content library and resource collective as well. So on the Small Business Bootcamp website, you went to the website to register for today's sessions, and you can see the upcoming sessions that we have planned on that site. We usually post them about 2 weeks out, have running 2 weeks total, but we are going to continue this program for the foreseeable future. But on there, we have some other tools and resources available for you as well. As I mentioned, we have a Small Business Resource Collective. And the Resource Collective are additional tools and guides provided by our statewide community partners. The tools and guides cover all different industries from construction, cosmetology, restaurants, retail, manufacturers, etc. There are guides on how you can help return stronger. There's business essentials, there's marketing strategies, and other tools and resources from those community partners. And as I mentioned, part of it is the Resource Collective is our content library. And on the Bootcamp website, we record all of our webinar sessions that we've done. We've been doing these for over a year, and we're in our 57th week, I believe, and we have all 56 weeks recorded, and those presentations can be found in the archive section of the website. And so it creates a content library of over 140, almost 150 or more sessions of expert guidance for small business that can be accessed anytime. So you can go back and watch any of the previous sessions you want, get that information, download the slide decks that were used to help benefit your business. Another great website that's available out there for everyone to access is the state's COVID-19 information and resource page. It is arizonatogether.org. It is a great page. Also, for Arizona business resources, we have the ACA's Arizona Business COVID-19 Business Resource website at azcommerce.com/COVID-19. The ACA also provides a number of different programs to help support small businesses. Our small business services can help support working with and navigating the SBA, working with the SBDCs and SCORE and other no-cost business counseling programs. We can help you if you're looking to work with local lenders, with local banking contacts, share some of the latest developments. Our workforce division can help work with employers that are looking to hire, be an employer liaison. They have programs for crosswalking employees. They have programs for training and upskilling employees. And they have some federal funding for training. And then our manufacturing extension partnership. Our Arizona MEP can work with manufacturers to address their COVID needs, work doing lean business plans, lean consulting. They do a lot of training classes focused on manufacturing. They can help manufacturers from A to Z with any of their business needs. They're a great program, and it's a national program, and our team is one of the best in the nation. And then we also have our small business checklist, and this is to help support those of you that are looking to start your own business right now or expand a product line within your business. The small business checklist can help people with the start, operate, and growing the business. And it identifies the commonly requested licensing information, licensing, registration, and compliance information at the local, state, and federal levels. You can also find information on procurement, marketing, and business planning, and so forth. It's a very in-depth program, and it's there to help support you as you grow or establish a business. And then we have our small business updates. We want to make sure we share in our updates that the EIDL program is still available. Even though the PPP program has closed, the EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, is still available. We'll post the links for these updates in the chat. So take a look at the chat for the link to the websites that has more information. Another program that is still out there that businesses can take advantage of is the Employee Retention Credit. We did a previous webinar that you can find in the archive on that. NFIB is doing a webinar on it, I believe, this week. And we will share some links to that information. But the Employee Retention Credit is a great opportunity to receive up to about $33,000 per employee, depending on your business and that program. But again, great opportunity. You can reach out to your accountant to get more information as well. Another source of great information for businesses at this time is the IRS Small Business and Self-Employment Tax Center. We're going to post a link on that. Then we're going to share the link for the SBA Arizona District Office. They have some good information. It's a good website to be aware of. So those links will be posted in the chat so you can access them. With that, we want to look at our upcoming sessions. So this Thursday, we're going to have our final session from our team at the SBCs up at Central Arizona College, Northland Pioneer College, and Coconino Community College. They've been doing a 4-part financial series for small business financials, and you can watch this Thursday session and then go back and watch the previous sessions. They're all independent presentations, but they also all tie together in a 4-part series. And then next Tuesday, we're going to have how to rebuild and refocus your team and return stronger, which will be the 3rd part from our presentations from our team at the University of Arizona. We're going to have Debbie Hemsell present that session. We're looking forward to that as well. And then we've got a special session on next week from tomorrow on Wednesday, June 16th on Paycheck Protection Program forgiveness. A lot of businesses got the Paycheck Protection Program, and there's a lot of businesses that have not applied for forgiveness yet from their 2020 PPP loans. And we want to make sure everybody knows how to apply and that you're applying for the forgiveness. It does not come automatically. It is something you have to do. So we have our experts from Beach Fleischman and Prestamos as part of that. So we're going to have a great special session on Wednesday, June 16th at 9 a.m. And then we have Thursday, June 17th, we have Karen Russo, who's been with us before from Money Keys on how to recover from financial loss. So it's going to be a really good session there as well. So hopefully you can make those upcoming sessions with us. But with that, we're going to look at today's session. Today we've got Joe Carella, Assistant Dean and Professor at the University of Arizona. Joe's been a great partner of ours throughout the whole Bootcamp series. And we appreciate his time and his expertise. And so Joe, I'm going to stop sharing and turn the time over to you. While Joe's getting set up, he's going to have an interactive presentation. And so he's going to ask that you use the chat for comments, and we'll use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen for direct questions. So again, chat for comments and Q&A for questions. Joe, it is all yours. Oh, and it looks like we lost Joe. Give us 1 second. Looks like we're having some technical difficulties here. Please hang tight. Joe was on with us earlier, so we will take a small moment here and to see if we can get him back online. So be a good chance while everybody's waiting to get up and stretch. Arms way up in the air, stretch a little bit, get your morning stretch in. We can refill your coffee or refill your water or milk or soda or whatever your preferred morning beverage is. Again, please hang tight. We're having some technical difficulties getting our presenter back online. He was with us and dropped off. We will be with you shortly. All right, again, I apologize. We're trying to get Joe back online. All right, we see Joe getting back on.
I am on. I am concerned though that my internet is unstable and I apologize. So I will see what happens here. Let's get going and hope for the best. If not, I want to make sure that everyone in the room knows that I will be doing this again if we have problems. We still live in a imperfect world of technology, unfortunately. You think you've got your bases covered, but unfortunately that's not the case. Let me give it a go and see if we can get going. And Robert, if you don't mind keeping your video on, that would be helpful because it gives me a sense whether I'm still talking or
Okay.
whether I'm connected or whether it's not the case. So give me a second, I'm gonna connect myself with my slides. Again, my apologies for. All right, can you see my slides?
Yep, looks good.
Excellent. So I'll cut to the chase and get straight to the heart of the session, which is about managing teams in such a way that we could return stronger from the pandemic. It's been a difficult year. I think that's a real understatement. We've all been swept away in different ways, and one of the aspects that I think has been more difficult for many has been either continuing with their small businesses or to retain the talent that they had so hardly worked on to acquire, and in general, just making tough decisions on where the business should go. We have obviously a lot of opportunities. I think that many of us are optimistic that the world is going in the right direction, that we can essentially head towards a recovery that feels a little bit like a V curve, where we are going to be going back to pre-pandemic levels. The challenge, though, is what will this world look like? And if we think about it, it is still a VUCA world. It's still a world in which there is a lot of complexity, a lot of ambiguity, a lot of uncertainty. Our workplace is changing, though. We know that that's going to be a big issue that we will have to confront. Expectations have changed. People are expecting the workplace to look differently, a lot more flexibility, a lot more technology. And if today's session is an indication of what working remotely can do to you, it's not always for the best, right? And it creates complexity and uncertainty. And the last part is, if this is the context, how do we manage our teams? How do we make sure that we're all in alignment? I want to make sure that you capture this with two perspectives. One is the perspective of you as an employer of teams, you as a manager of teams. But if instead you are not a manager of team, but you are a team member, I want you to take some lessons from this too, because there are some things that you can do to help your team managers, to help your business owners better structure the team so that the team can have greater impact. With that, I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, in the chat, if you could tell me what were some of the causes of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity that we experienced during the pandemic. So VUCA is a concept that we often use in business. It's this idea that we are essentially in a white water environment in which things are difficult to figure out. There's a lot of ambiguity, complexity, uncertainty, and volatility. In the chat, can you tell me what you think were things that we experienced during the pandemic? And I'm excited to see what you think those are. I've got a few, and I will share mine. Conflicting information from various sources. George, absolutely, you're absolutely right. We were not really sure which way to go. Fear, clients disappeared, absolutely, Jamie. And in fact, I'm going to share with you what my list is. It has some of the things that you said. So sales, to Jamie's point, we were not, a lot of clients canceled on us. Some put us on hold. Shan, great point, supply chain bottlenecks, and you'll see that I have them there. The inability to get goods that you needed at the right time, and just in general, basic health issues, but also, as Evelyn is pointing out, communication issues with Zoom-based management, being able to stay on top of things, collaborate with others, reliability of teams. People had issues at home sometimes that they had to take care of, whether it was kids, whether it was sick relatives. We've experienced it all. Do we think, though, that all of this turbulence is actually over? Or is it being replaced with something else? Now that we've gotten used to things, I think we can manage many of the kind of COVID conditions. But as we go into the post-COVID world, do we think that this volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity has changed? Not over, Lynn says. And I agree. For me, some of the factors that really make this still a turbulent environment are things like issues around workforce. Whether it is the availability of workforce, I speak to lots of small business owners that are struggling to recruit right now. And I don't think, it would be easy to assume that the availability of essentially unemployment assistance is one of the causes of the unavailability of workforce. If you look at where we are at from an unemployment perspective, we're at 5.8%. So it's not like it's exactly 8 or 10% and people are refusing to work. And especially in Arizona, the rates are even lower. My point is that as we observe how workforce is coming back to work, a lot of people have made decisions to actually change careers, to instead dedicate themselves to things that they hadn't been able to, or have relocated and moved to other places where they feel that they have a better work-life balance. There are still issues around supply chain, and those are issues both in terms of availability, but also in terms of prices. I think that we're all experiencing high volatility when it comes to the price of the goods that we're buying. And I cannot help but quoting Jamie again, he's in college now, way different for me. So many of the people that were available before are now reconsidering how they think about the return to work. Helene, great point. There is a lot of hesitancy for parents, the availability for kids to be able to return to school in a way that it's consistent. All of these are challenges that are still present and that create issues around workforce availability. So for me, those translates into issues that ultimately have an impact on how we manage teams. And it's more imperative that we have control and understanding how to engage teams than we did even before the pandemic. Right before the pandemic, I think that we were all a little bit on autopilot. We felt that things were humming along. We were just getting our businesses to take advantage of the tax breaks that we've had over the past few years. It was an environment that felt like a little bit on autopilot. I feel that where we're at is that this external environment that it's still volatile can force us to pivot when we last expected. And if it forces us to pivot when we last expected, we better be ready to know how to adapt. And in this adaptation, both as employers and both as employees, we need to be thinking, how is our workplace changing in terms of expectations and behaviors? And finally, if these workplaces expectations and behaviors are changing, how do we help our team members see our vision and execute accordingly? I have one more question for you. How do you think you would, how would you work with your team to execute your strategy under these conditions? Tell me, what are some of the things that, that you would do in an environment that it's this choppy? What are some actions? And if you're a team member, what do you think that your boss should do? Survey employees. Christine is talking about survey employees. That's a really interesting point, Christine, and you'll find out in a minute why I think that. What else? And Jamie, I get it that you don't have employees. I am curious how you think you would help your boss with the execution of the strategy. Ensuring communication is always happening, open communication of strategies on a regular basis. I love this. Listen to the concerns of the team members, share honestly and frequently, start out at a reasonable pace, test the waters. These are all great suggestions. And yet, when I look at how teams are in general run, I think that there is a tendency to get right into the doing the work. And I see it especially prevalent in small teams. There is, I would say, a certain natural propensity to get head down, head first, and get the work done. We don't have time to waste. We need to get revenue. We just need to get the work done. I love how you're all thinking differently, and I hope that that's what you're translating into action when it comes to your work. Here is my suggestion, and it's based on the research that I've done over the past few years on what is really helpful for teams to focus on and how do you manage high impact teams. Again, I want to remind you, it's important that you think of this work as both an employer, but also as an employee, as both a boss, but also as a worker, as one of your team members. And if you are one or the other, I want you to think about what you should do to make sure that the team that you're part of gets to the best of its performance. I think it's interesting that Matthew is talking about hiring 1099 employees versus full-time employees or temp agencies. It's an interesting concept. It can have a positive value, especially if you're trying to stay flexible. I'm going to argue that you need a little bit more than that to get high impact from your teams. But so let's start. My research tells me that to get us to a place where we have teams that are successful, it is not enough that we have a project plan and that project plan tells us exactly what everyone is going to do. I think, in fact, as you're going to find out in my presentation, that is almost one of the latest steps in the process. I posit to you that the first starting point is to be clear why we are here. The conditions in which we are today and the business that we do today may look very different from the business that we have done in the past. If I think of my own industry, education, we were very much focused on in-classroom experiences. Online learning had a space, but it was not a prevalent space. We had to rethink all of that. And in rethinking all of that, we need to ask ourselves, why are we doing the things that we're doing? What is the purpose of the actions that we're taking? Why are we serving the clients in the way that we do? And as a boss, it's your responsibility to make that explicit to your team members. It is your responsibility to know, even as you're navigating turbulence, you should be asking yourself, why do I keep going back to work and working on this business? What is the ultimate purpose of this? If you're not clear, what ends up happening that your team members, you guessed it, are not going to be clear as to why they're coming to work. And if they're not very clear, what's going to ensue? Confusion, lack of clarity, lack of alignment, and lack of desire to buy into the vision that you have, because there isn't one. I think that that's the first step, and that's how you should be starting with. Where you need to go next, I would really recommend that you start thinking about goals. What are we here to do? So what are some goals that you think are important? This is the part where those goals are not just formulated by you, but are formulated by you and your team. You want to be thinking about what the impact of those goals is going to be. You want to be thinking about how these goals are going to help you to accomplish your vision for the business itself. So you need to start to tie the why are we here vision for your business to the major goals that you think are important for your business. At this point in time, your goals can be fuzzy. They don't have to be specific. They have to be high level. They have to really drive some core level, high impact activities that you know you want to get done, that are going to make a difference to your business. If you do this right, and if you involve your team members, guess what's going to happen? They're going to start to feel empowered. They're going to start to feel like they have ownership. They're going to start to be accountable because they've helped you to draft those goals and to understand how those goals play into that vision. Next step is going to be, how will we do it? How will we do it? It's all about roles and responsibilities. It's about making clear that people have decision rights, making clear what those decision rights are. People will work for you and will be accountable if you make clear how far their decisions can go. Let's talk about a small business. Can they only process payments? Can they offer discounts? Can they, for example, replenish your inventory? You need to be clear on what responsibilities your team members have. Because guess what? If they're not clear, the worst part of management sets in. And it's the part where we all start making assumptions. And we all start saying, oh, I thought that you were responsible for that, so I did not order any supplies, and this morning we cannot start our business until we go out and buy those supplies. So defining roles and responsibilities is an important next step after you have clarified what the major goals are. It's only at this point, once you have clarified roles and responsibilities, that you need to focus on what we consider to be the crux of management, i.e., who does what when. And so having a chart, having a project chart, having a project plan. And I hear you out, Evelyn, when you're asking about a simple project management program. My recommendation to you would be to use something like Smartsheets. It's an online program. It's actually not that expensive. We use it ourselves, and it allows us to map on a project chart the series of activities that we need to complete according to the projects that we have to do. So my recommendation would be Smartsheets. It's only at this point that you can really assign clear responsibilities for the specific tasks that will help you to accomplish those goals. I find that successful managers can do the right mix of empowering teams to define those tasks so that those tasks fit into the major goals that we had identified, but also staying on top of things and clarifying what the expectations are so that the team members know what success looks like. If you've done this right, teams will be well on their way to get your business results, the business results that you're looking for. because they know exactly what their roles and responsibilities are. We covered that into how will we do it. They will also know specifically what tasks they need to accomplish, and they will be able to show you proof that they have completed those tasks on a regular basis. This is a point where I find lots of teams go on autopilot, and I think that that's the wrong mindset. And my research of working with teams, the teams that are more successful are never satisfied with the status quo. They're always thinking about two things, and this is the what next component. So the last part of this chart that you're seeing, the what next is about being clear on, have we accomplished the goals that we set ourselves to achieve? Conflict adverse managers, and there's a bunch of them, are never able to look back and say, have we done what we needed to do, and have those difficult conversations with their team members if they haven't. But also having the opportunity to reflect on where these two ambitious goals that I've set, were they good in some areas but not in other areas, and why was that the case? So the what next is about celebrating accomplishments if you've done that, identifying what areas you need to improve on. And the last part, which I think is really critical, is how do we get better? Have your team refocus on what is that we're going to be doing next to make us even better than we were before. That will have a natural impact on, have we been able to accomplish the vision that we had set for ourselves? Do we need to take more steps? Do we need to be thinking of a different vision? And so if you've done this right, the what next goes back into the why are we here, and you're able to redefine the vision that you have. You're able to then redefine the major goals that you have. You're able to redefine roles and responsibilities, which leads you to then being able to define what specific tasks and activities should the team be performing. Who does what, when. With that, I'm going to stop and offer that if you're really spending time communicating clearly with your team, going back to some of the comments that you all made, if you've made transparent your thinking, you're more likely to create satisfaction in the lives of your employees. You're more likely as an employee to experience satisfaction. You're more likely to be able to engage your boss and ask questions around, hey, my role is not clear. I don't feel that I really understand the overall direction that we're taking as a business. Do we know what we would do if things were not to pan out? All of these are important, very important questions that as a team member or as a manager of teams, you should be setting out to answer and to question if you're a team member. With that, I'm going to stop and see if there are any questions, and I am grateful for your comments throughout this little session.
All right, if you have questions for Joe, post them in the Q&A. We have some time that we can give with Joe and ask him about some of the ways to help your teams work through and come back. So please take a moment and then post those questions in the Q&A box. We do have one question. Let's see. There we go.
Great, I see it. What is a team member or manager major role? That's a great question. And so I'm going to separate the two because the role of the team member is very different from the role of the manager. I find that there's often a lot of confusion on within teams on what do you think are kind of activities that a manager should perform. I find that managers that are generally inexperienced, that have not managed team extensively, tend to want to get into the weeds of the work that their workers should be doing, the team members should be doing. There is a certain, how can I put it, comfort in sitting down with your team members and figuring out what is that they haven't done right and helping them to do that yourself. The role of a manager should not be to get into the weeds and perform the work of his or her team members. The work of a manager is to coach the team members, to help them learn, to help them accomplish those tasks and goals that as a manager you need to set. So your role as a manager is to set goals, to drive the direction of the business that you're responsible for, and to coach team members when they are in times of difficulty, but also to recognize team members when they're doing something right. That's the role of a manager. The role of a team member is to execute on the strategy, is to execute on the tasks that have been accomplished. Execution, though, cannot be blind. If you're a good, responsible team member, you will report back up if something is not working. And I find that unhealthy relationships when it comes to managers and teams are the ones where team members are scared to report back to the manager because they don't want them to create problems. They don't want to kind of report an issue and then have the manager get upset. Your job as a team member is to be accountable if you've done something that you think shouldn't be done, is to be accountable if you think that there are errors in the way in which the business is set up, if there is feedback from the clients, from your customers that speaks to the need for change, for a different product, a different service, whatever it may be. All of that needs to be the responsibility of a team member. And you need to do so in a way that it's respectful as a team member, in a way that engages the manager's frontotemporal cortex, so the decision parts of the brain, as opposed to the fear, the concern, the kind of the emotions of your manager that then get the best of them and do not let them focus on how to change and improve the business. Do I think that the team manager has a responsibility in that sense? Absolutely. You as a team manager cannot get upset, cannot get frustrated. You really need to be in control of your emotions so that your team members feel that they can trust you in this exchange, that it's about improving the business. So assuming best intent, I think it's always a great formula in this context. I've gone quite a bit, but I wanted to make sure that we covered both aspects since you were asking. So the next question from Helene, do you want me to address that, Robert?
Yeah, it looks like both those questions in there are the same questions.
Yes, so they are, yes.
Very good topic nowadays, so.
I can see that. How do you leverage the strength of geographically distant teams when team members are each fulfilling critical but very different roles? That's a great question. I think that when you think of geographically dispersed teams, one of the biggest challenges for a manager is to keep them all motivated and all on the same page. The way in which I think you can leverage their strengths is by having each team member do almost an inventory of their capabilities and making sure that that's shared within the context of your team meetings. I personally feel that geographically distant teams need even more engagement than physically co-located teams. You can guess why. They don't have the opportunity to go to the water cooler. They don't have the opportunity to maybe have the in-passing conversation by walking by their desk. So as a manager, I think that the critical dimension of success is how frequently do you do an inventory of capabilities, new skills that people have acquired, new accomplishments that have been that have been achieved. All of those are things that are important, as well as making sure, you may want to use the managing a high impact model that I shared with you, and making sure that people are always on the same page. Are we clear on roles and responsibilities? Do we know what our goals are? Are we still in line with the vision that we had set for ourselves? I think that as a responsible manager, you need to be on top of that more frequently than you would if you had a physically co-located team. I hope that answers your question.
You know, Joe, with that, with the remote teams, one of the things that I've done with my team here and other teams within the ACA have done is we have a daily 15-minute huddle just to touch base real quick on what we've got going on, since we don't have that office interaction. And it's really helped keep us in touch and probably communicating better than before. So that's one option.
That's a great way to do it. I have heard of teams that, and it really depends on also the pace of your business. In some businesses, you may want to check in once a week. With other businesses, instead, you want to check in daily. And it really depends also on the function of the business. Again, if you're working on large scale projects where weeks go by where individuals have to work on their individual tasks, maybe talking every day is not as helpful. While instead, if, for example, you're focused on sales, you're in a customer support environment, what Robert was suggesting and the daily engagements are maybe more needed. But one of the things that I think is really critical, ask your team. They will tell you how frequently they want to engage. Don't make the assumption that it's on your terms and you kind of go, oh my God, I've had enough of my team this week. I don't want to hear them. It's not about you. It's about them and their needs. And so how do you engage them in a way that that makes them feel that they're being heard and that they have an opportunity to exchange ideas at the same time? And Evelyn, I'm happy to take this offline. So I'm happy to share in the chat. I saw that you were asking what an inventory would look like. I'm going to put my email address in the chat so that if you want to follow up with me on a template on an inventory, I'll be happy to do that. And I thought that there was another question.
There's a few more questions in the Q&A, Joe. So we can.
All right. Okay, let's do it. Let's start with, I'm going from top to bottom. So I apologize if your question is coming last. I'm going to start at the top. So one of the anonymous attendees is asking, how do you approach your manager if other members of the group are not performing their share of work as instructed without posing as I'm guessing as mean to the employee, or limit their work and not go above and beyond their assignment? It's a great question. And for me, it's not about individual accountability, but it's about team accountability. And so if you are finding yourself that you're pulling your weight more than others, I think that it goes back to step number 3 in the managing a high impact team, which speaks to talking to your manager about the fact that there may be some ambiguity around roles and responsibilities. Sometimes people don't do work not because they're slackers, but because, quite frankly, they don't know that that's their responsibility. They're not clear, or they just think to themselves, well, you know, the environment in which we're in, I'm just going to do the minimum because I feel that that's all that's required of me. I think that it's more complicated than just people's basic instincts of how can I get away with it. And so engaging your boss in a conversation that says, hey, I feel that we would all benefit from being clear on what roles and responsibilities are and who's supposed to do what, who's in charge of what goals, who has decisions over what. That's another aspect why people may not do things. They may not feel empowered to make decisions. I think that that's a healthier conversation than going to your boss and say, hey, I think that Joe Carella is slacking. He should be working harder than he is. I think that that's a healthier conversation to be had. Robert, I'm going through the list. Are you okay with that?
No, absolutely. That's fine.
Okay. So the challenge working with contractors is that they don't care about the overall goals. I've had some problems with contractors not finishing the contracted work, not caring if they are paid or not because of a better opportunity or poor management on their end. Any ideas for motivating them to finish or communicating better? It sort of speaks to the earlier point, and I'm trying to remember who suggested that having 1099s provides flexibility. And I agree. I'm trying to see if I can find that because I want to make sure that I acknowledge it because it's a good idea. The idea of engaging others and there are contractors gives you a lot of flexibility. And it was Matthew Piatkowski. Maybe you go by Matt. Hi, Matt. That concept of staying flexible is a good one. The downside, though, is what Evelyn is talking about, is the fact that they're not really empowered. They don't feel that they own this. They feel that they are essentially your slave labor for the duration of the project. For me, the best way to motivate 1099s is to make sure that you have clear key performance indicators that speak to how they're going to get rewarded for the work that they do. So rather than paying them up front, rather than paying them weekly, rather than using some formula that is not attached to what they have to accomplish for you, be clear on what you're asking them to do and make sure that there are some scheduled payments along the way so that they get paid when they complete a task. An even better way is to offer incentives. If they get the work done by the week before then it's due, then they're going to get paid more. So find ways to motivate people that go beyond the traditional confines of the manager worker relationship that you would find in an organization where trust is built over time, and try to drive instead based on performance indicators and incentives. Next question is, what are some examples a manager should not share with members about business? Ooh, that's a great question, Amanda, because I think it speaks to what extent can you be transparent with your team members? And it's a really difficult one for me to answer. I don't know that I have a clear-cut answer because it will very much depend on where your business is at and what the constraints that your business is facing are. Sometimes there are decisions that as a manager only you can take. And there are situations where exposing your thinking only can lead to potential issues around trust. So I don't know that I have a very specific answer, and I wish that I did. But I think that the more you become a manager, the more you understand how to be transparent with your team members and to what extent you can or cannot be depending on certain situations. For me, it's pretty obvious. Anytime that has to do with issues connected to the law, whether some illicit behaviors are taking place, whether there are consequences, legal consequences of actions that you're taking, you need to be careful. And everything else really becomes it's your discretion as a team member, as a team manager, to figure out to what extent you want to share with the team. My preference, and I think it's a preference that I am experiencing quite a bit in, especially in Gen Z and millennials, is that they would rather have transparency and have an understanding of what's going on than not being told things. And so my preference is to engage my team members in ways that feel constructive, even when I have to give bad news, which is why it's important as a team member, as a manager, to make sure that you know how to give critical feedback, how to manage a crisis, how to engage them in what can be a constructive dialogue. Next question. what is your experience with managing equity and inclusion in teams? And do you have a couple of BPs to share here? I'm not familiar with what you mean with BP here.
Probably best practices.
Oh, best practices. Okay, because I was going into the place of business processes, and I was thinking, oh my God, how do I share business processes here? Great, thank you, Robert, for clarifying that for me. Sometimes in the moment you miss what an acronym means. So thank you, Melissa, for the question. I have spent quite a bit of time recently with, I work as a consultant to companies. I don't just teach. And I've spent quite a bit of time with organizations that are concerned, thank you, Melissa, that are concerned with issues around equity and inclusion. And I think that one of the things that I always remind them is that my definition of equity is the definition of inequity to somebody else, if they feel that they're not being included. And so for me, the best practice is how clear are you on what are the opportunities for people to contribute to the organization in ways that makes them feel included. And I personally spend an inordinate amount of time talking to companies about the importance of inclusive thinking, of diversity of thought, because for me, that's a true definition of diversity. If we're allowing everyone to respectfully contribute to the dialogue of the organization, then we are allowing everyone to feel included. And I just have found that the companies that try to define inclusion and equity through just the more traditional definition of diversity end up having someone feel excluded anyway. I don't care whether it's along protected categories or not. An inclusive workplace is one in which no one is left behind, and in which you are keeping your unconscious biases in check, where you're not, for example, hanging out with your pals because they understand you and it's easy to get a project done because they're like you and they get it, but rather spending time to understand, what am I missing in the process of not including other voices? And we all know that if we are in a room with people who are different from us, we're going to be hearing things that we've never heard before. How good is that, especially at a time when there is so much uncertainty, especially when there is so much turbulence? We may be missing out on really good insight if we don't include people who are different from us. And for me, it's just as basic as that.
Excellent. That was a great way to wrap up, Joe. Thank you for answering those questions. Thank you for the attendees for those great questions you asked. Joe, we appreciate you coming on with us, even though we had that pause. Technical difficulties happen. So we're glad
I'm so grateful
and help us out. But we're going to go ahead and wrap up. It is that time of the day. We appreciate Joe's expertise and with us, and his team that's going to be back with us again next Tuesday. We hope to see everybody on this Thursday for our next boot camp session, Thursday, 9 a.m. And until then, everybody be safe. Have a great day. And thank you for joining us. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.